Ladies and gentlemen, Silver City Community Theater Radio Hour presents The Belle of Amherst, a one-woman play by William Luce, featuring Artistic Director-in-Residence Wendy Spurgeon as Emily Dickinson. This was recorded in front of a live audience by Chris Wellman of Mystic Way Productions. We hope you enjoy the audio from Act 1 right here on Gila Members Community Radio, KURU 89.1 FM, Silver City, New Mexico, and streaming online at gmcr.org.
This is my introduction. Black cake. It's my own special recipe. Forgive me if I'm frightened. I never see strangers and hardly know what to say. My sister Lavinia, she's younger than I. She says I tend to wander back and forth in time, so you must bear with me. I was born December 10th, 1830, which makes me 53. Welcome to Amherst. My name is Emily Elizabeth Dickinson. Elizabeth is from my Aunt Elizabeth Dickinson Currier. She's my father's sister. Oh, how the trees stand up straight when they hear Aunt Libby's little boots come thumping into Amherst. She's the only male relative on the female side. Dear Aunt Libby. Oh, she'd look perfectly at home in a Greek chorus. But I don't use my middle name anymore since I became a poet. Well, Professor Higginson, the literary critic, doesn't think my poems are... Well, no matter. I have had 7 poems published, anonymously, to be sure. So you can see why I prefer to introduce myself to you as a poet. Here in Amherst, I'm known as Squire Edward Dickinson's half-cracked daughter. Well, I am. The neighbors can't figure me out. I don't cross my father's ground to any house or town. I haven't left the house in years. When the census taker asked my occupation, I just said, at home. The soul selects her own society, then shuts the door. Why should I socialize with village gossips? Oh, there goes one now. Henrietta Sweetser. Everyone knows Henny. She'd even intimidate the Antichrist. Well, look at her. She looks more like a jar of sweetmeats every day. Oh, now she's strolling by the house trying to catch a glimpse of me. Would you like that? So I give them something to talk about. I dress in white all year round, even in winter. Bridal white, Henny calls it. Dear, dresses in bridal white she does every day of the blessed year, year in, year out. Disappointed in love as a girl, so I hear. Poor creature, oh, so very sad. And her sister, Lavinia, a spinster too, didn't you know? Oh, yes, stayed unmarried just to be at home and take care of Miss Emily. 2 maids in that big house. Oh, what a lonely life to shut yourself away from good people like us. Indeed. You should see them come to the door, bearing gifts, craning their necks, trying to see over Vinny's shoulder. But I'm too fast for them. I've already run up the stairs 2 steps at a time, and I hide there till they leave. You can imagine what they make of that. One old lady came to the door the other day to try to catch a peek inside. I surprised her by answering the door myself. She stammered something about looking for a house to buy. To save the expense of moving, I directed her to the cemetery. Oh, the cake! I do all the baking here at Homestead. I even banged the spice for this cake. My father always raved about my baking. He would eat no cake or bread but mine. This is lovely. You know, I would love for each of you to have a little sample. Will you be a dear? Will you please take this whole tray, take a little nibble, and then pass it down to your neighbors so everyone can take a little piece if they'd like and sample. And then maybe one of you could be a dear over here and pass it over to these lovely people over here. Oh, no, it's really very easy to make. The recipe's very simple. All goes slowly. Black cake. 2 pounds of flour, 2 pounds of sugar, 2 pounds of butter, 19 eggs, 5 pounds of raisins, 1.5 pounds of currants, 1.5 pounds of citron, 1/2 pint of brandy. I never use Father's Best. 1/2 pint of molasses, 2 nutmegs, and 5 teaspoons of cloves, mace, and cinnamon, and 2 teaspoons of soda and 1.5 teaspoons of salt. I'm sorry, am I going too fast? Just beat butter and sugar together. Add the 19 eggs one at a time. Now, this is very important, without beating. Then, beat the mixture again, adding the brandy alternately with the flour, soda, spices, and salt you've sifted together. Then the molasses. Now, take your 5 pounds of raisins and your 3 pounds of currants and citron and very gently sprinkle in all 8 pounds. Slowly now, as you stir. It'll build strong arm muscles. Bake for 3 hours if you use cake pans. Or if you use a milk pan as I do, you'd better leave it in the oven for 6 or 7 hours. Everybody loves it. I hope you will. Sometimes I bake one for a neighbor, and I enclose a short note that's usually so obscure no one can understand it. I hear my little notes are becoming collector's items in the village. People compare them to see who has the strangest one. Excuse me. We must be careful what we say. No bird resumes its egg. That'll keep them guessing. Oh, that reminds me. I must send a note to Mrs. Hills. She's just been admitted to the Maplewood Infirmary. Surgeons must be very careful when they take the knife. Underneath their fine incisions stirs the culprit. Life. That'll cheer her up. I'm told one woman in Amherst is imitating me now. Probably Clarissa Cartwright. Oh, I do enjoy them. My menagerie. I suppose people in small towns must have their local characters. And for Amherst, that's what I am. But do you know something? I enjoy the game. Now, I've never said this to anyone, but I'll tell you, I do it on purpose. The white dress, the seclusion, it's all deliberate. But my brother Austin, he knows. He says, Emily, stop your posing. Austin knows me through and through as no one else does. Father and mother never understood me. And Vinny doesn't know me either. Austin and I are quite unlike most anyone, and therefore are more dependent on each other for delight. But I do think sometimes the stories about me distress him. Now, in a way, the stories are true. Oh, I believe in truth, but I think it can be slanted just a little. Do you know what I'm saying? Tell all the truth, but tell it slant. Success in circuit lies. Too bright for our infirm delight, the truth's superb surprise. As lightning to the children eased with explanation kind, the truth must dazzle gradually, or every man be blind. Words are my life. I look at words as if they were entities, sacred beings. There are words to which I lift my hat when I see them sitting on a page. Sometimes I write one. Circumference. And I look at its outlines until it starts to glow brighter than any sapphire. I hesitate which words to take when I write a poem. A poet can choose but a few words, and they have to be the chiefest words, the best words. A word is dead when it is said. Some say, I say, it just begins to live that day. If I read Keats, Shelley, Shakespeare, Mrs. Browning, Emily Bronte, oh, what an afternoon for heaven when Bronte entered there, and they make my whole body so cold, no fire can ever warm me. I know that is poetry. Have you ever felt that way? If I feel physically as if the top of my head were taken off, I know that is poetry. These are the only ways I know it. Is there any other way? My friend, Helen Hunt Jackson, oh, you'd love her. She's moved to Colorado. Helen is a fine scholar of words and a well-known writer. You may have read her book, Ramona. She has the facts, but not the phosphorescence. Oh, phosphorescence. Now there's a word to lift your hat to. Can you spell it? To find that phosphorescence, that light within, is the genius behind poetry. Oh dear. Well, we have an Irish girl who's been with us for a long time. I was here yesterday at tea when she asked me how to spell genius. Why do you ask, Maggie? Oh, no, leave the tray, dear. Writing to your brother. I see. And who are you describing? Me? Oh, Maggie! Genius. Genius. Don't ask me that. I don't know what it means. But wait, let's see what Mr. Webster says. Genius. Tutelary spirit of a person, place, etc. Opposed spirit seeking one's salvation or damnation. One influencing powerfully for either good or evil. He doesn't know. Either. No one knows that, Maggie. No one. Thank you, dear. Do you know that every one of you is, to me, a poem? You and you, each one a rare creation. I suppose that's why I love you and you love me, whether we realize it or not. I discovered that secret a long time ago about the souls of people, and I thought that being a poem oneself precluded the writing of poems, but I saw my mistake. The poets light, but lamps themselves go out. But the light goes on and on. Essences are marked for... No, that's not the best word. Labeled. That's better. Essences are labeled for immortality. If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. If I can ease one life the aching, or cool one pain, or help one fainting robin unto his nest again, I shall not live in vain. People find it hard to believe I had a normal childhood. They visualize instead a miniature version of me as I am now, a pint-sized little Emily, dressed all in white, lisping riddles and aphorisms in baby talk, and of course, hiding from the family. I guess I am to blame for that false impression. Actually, at 15, I was a very typical Amherst girl. I went to dances. I giggled my way through classes, quilting bees, and scores of parties. I was trying very hard to believe I was a ravishing beauty, I was infatuated with one dashing young man after another, and I sent valentines. Austin! Austin! How many valentines has my handsome brother received? 11? I haven't received any. Vinny's received some beautiful ones, but I've almost given up hope. Austin, come in here. Which do you prefer? Do you think the hearts are too big? The cupids? Austin, do you think you could tell James Francis Billings that I'm simply pining away for a valentine? Surely he hasn't lost his former affection for me? Please! Oh, Austin, come back here! Awake ye muses 9, sing me a strain divine, unwind the solemn twine and tie my valentine! Oh, what are brothers for? Oh, Abaya, my dearest girlfriend, will you be my valentine? I would love to send you a bouquet if I had an opportunity, and you could press it and write under it the last flowers of summer. Wouldn't it be poetical? And you know, that's what young ladies aim to be nowadays, poetical. And I am growing handsome very fast indeed. I expect I shall be the Belle of Amherst when I reach my 17th year. I don't doubt I shall have perfect crowds of admirers at that age. Then, at dances, how I shall delight to make them await my bidding, and with what delight shall I witness their suspense while I make my final decision. Oh, why, James Francis Billings! Excuse me, Mother. Oh, my. Oh, what handsome whiskers. How have you been? Isn't it a wonderful party? Oh, thank you. It is a Godey ladies' book pattern. So perfect for dancing, don't you think? Well, you don't like dancing. Oh, I'm well, thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh, yes, isn't it? July is such a glorious month. Oh, you don't like rhubarb, I guess. Oh, yes, I adore cooking. Oh, can't get enough of cooking. Why, my mother says any man I marry will... But my sister? Lavinia as well. Yes, I'll tell her. Mr. Billings. Mr. Billings, how do you like going to school at Ipswich Cemetery? Seminary! Mr. Billings! Seems Mr. Billings found the pretty girl in yellow. My father's house and my garden. This is my world. And for my companions, I have the hills and the sundown and my dog, Carlo, large as myself, that my father bought me. These are better than beings because they know, but don't tell. And the noise from the pool at noon excels my piano. You see, I never had to go anywhere to find my paradise. I found it all right here. The only home I ever wanted, here in Amherst, Massachusetts. Massachusetts, now there's a word to lift your hat to. Paradise is no journey, because it is within. But for that very cause, it is the most arduous of journeys. I travel the road into my soul, all the time. I dwell in possibility, a fairer house than prose, more numerous of windows, superior of doors, of chambers as the cedars, impregnable of eye, and for an everlasting roof the gable of the sky. Of visitors, the fairest. For occupation, this. The spreading wide my narrow hands to gather paradise. Nature is the highest art, don't you think? Or just to see a summer sky is poetry. Summer, the orchard is full of blue jays. To see them follow the hose for a drop of water is a touching sight. Oh, they won't take it if I hand it to them. They run and shriek as if they were being assassinated. But oh, to steal it, that is bliss. And in June, without fail, the circus comes to town. It passed by my house last night. I watched it till 3:30 in the morning. Minnie! Maggie, the wagons! They're here! Tell Maggie! They said, hoy, hoy, to their horses. Still I feel the red, though the drums are gone. For a while, Algiers was outside my window. Yes, Algiers. I've never seen such heat. The sun beat down so today. I think everything will become ripe, so it can be autumn tomorrow. Oh, how I loved the beginning of school each year. My girlfriends and I had such good times together. Abaya Root, Sarah Tracy, Abby Wood, Emmeline Kellogg, Emily Fowler. There were so many Emilys at the academy, our teachers couldn't keep us straight. Oh, social graces with Miss Woodbridge. Knees straight, ladies. Shoulders back. Very good, Miss Dickinson. Thank you, Miss Woodbridge. During my last semester, we girls formed a Shakespeare Society. It was my idea. We invited the boys to join us. That was my idea, too. And at our first meeting, we were to read The Tempest. Good afternoon, Tutor Crowell. What do you mean? You want us to take all our copies and cross out the questionable passages? What do you mean by questionable, Mr. Crowell? Decency. But what good is crossing them out going to do when I've already read them? And so has Abby and Judy, haven't you girls? Anyway, how do we dare edit Shakespeare, Mr. Crowell? Well, I disagree. In Hamlet, it says there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Besides, I don't want marks in my book. All right, well, you boys can do as you like, but we girls don't think there's anything wicked in Shakespeare, and if there is, we don't want to know about it. We shall read everything, Mr. Crowell, naughty words and all. Come on, girls. Monster, I do smell all horse piss, at which my nose is in great indignation. Lady, shall I lie on your lap? No, my lord. I mean my head upon your lap. Aye, my lord. Do you think I meant country matters? I think nothing, my lord. That's a fair thought to lie between maids' legs. What is, my lord? Nothing. What is thy cause? Adultery? Thou shalt not die? Die for adultery? No! The wren goes to it, and the small gilded fly does letter in my sight. Let copulation thrive! How about that, Mr. Crowell? The clock stopped this afternoon during a... Do you hear those bells? That's the first Congregational church. A funeral. Must be Jenny Hitchcock's mother. So there's one orphan more. Vinny went to the service. She just got back. She said, while the minister prayed, a hen with her chicks came up and tried to fly into the window. I suppose the dead lady used to feed them, and they wanted to bid her goodbye. I don't know why it is, but it doesn't seem to me that I shall ever cease to live on earth. I can't imagine with the farthest stretch of my imagination and my own death scene that this me that walks and works must die some fair or stormy day. It's not that I'm afraid to die. Death is an old friend to me. I made his acquaintance in childhood. So many friends died young and were carried past our house on the way to the burial ground. Ellen Mary Kingman, the Packard girls, Abby Ann Haskell, James Francis Billings, who didn't like rhubarb. There's been a death in the opposite house as lately as today. I know it by the numb look such houses have always. The neighbors rustle in and out. The doctor drives away. A window opens like a pod, abrupt, mechanically. Somebody flings a mattress out. The children hurry by. They wonder if it died on that. I used to. When a boy. The minister goes stiffly in as if the house were his, and he owned all the mourners now, and little boys beside. And then the milliner, and the man of the appalling trade, to take the measure of the house. There'll be that dark parade of tassels and of coaches. Soon, it's easy as a sign, the intuition of the news in just a country town. Poor Jenny.
You're listening to Wendy Spurgeon as Emily Dickinson in William Luce's The Belle of Amherst Act 1 on KURU 89.1 FM.
And what was I telling you? Oh, yes, the clock stopped this afternoon during a thunder shower. Made it seem like Judgment Day. Do you know, I never knew how to tell time by the clock till I was 15. Father thought he taught me, but I didn't understand. And I was afraid to say I didn't and afraid to ask anyone else lest he should know. Can you imagine ever knowing what time it was? Thank goodness for twilight. My father never kissed us goodnight in his life. Oh, I know he loved us, but he was so austere. Why, he hardly ever smiled. My father, at ease, he said, Squire Dickinson, do you think you could smile a little, please? Father said, I am smiling. You see, he looks like a bear. He didn't approve of Santa Claus and all such prowling gentlemen. Father was the only one in the house to say, damn. Now, someone in every house ought to say damn, of course. And when Father said it, he meant it. Why, if his newspaper was ever misplaced, damn! Father was the only one to say it. No one else could say it but Father. It was absolutely forbidden. Father forbade many things. I remember when my sister Vinnie was a girl, she enjoyed showing off her pretty white shoulders by wearing her summer frocks quite low, around Here, it was the fashion. And then she'd languish around the house looking dreamy-eyed, and she'd primp in front of the mirror, and then she'd run to the window every time a boy walked by the house. "Hello, Benjamin!" Well, Father could only take so much of this, and then he'd bark at her. "Lavinia, don't be so affected. Put on a shawl." And then poor Vin would flounce dramatically out of the room and stomp up the stairs to a bedroom and slam the door. Bang! And then she'd pout for the rest of the day. Trouble was, she was even prettier when she pouted. Oh, but my father was, so proper. Very demanding. Inflexible. That's why any show of leniency or understanding on his part would disarm us completely. I remember when he discovered I was writing until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Oh, Father! Oh, I thought you were asleep. 2 o'clock? Is it that late? But this is the only time the house is quiet, Father. Except for Vinnie. She snores like a poker and a shovel and a pair of tongs. Yes, Father, I know you have a rule about early rising, but I haven't missed one morning, have I? Well, I was writing, Father. Yes, Father. Good night. Oh, just a poem. Now? Out loud? To make a prairie, Father. To make a prairie, it takes a clover and 1 bee. 1 clover, a bee, and reverie. The reverie alone will do if bees are few. Another one? Yes, I have more. Excuse me, I keep my finished ones in here. I'll tell you how the sun rose, a ribbon at a time. The steeples swam in amethyst. The news, like squirrels, ran. The hills untied their bonnets. The bobolinks begun. Then I said softly to myself, that must have been the sun. But how he set, I know not. There seemed a purple stile that little yellow boys and girls were climbing all the while, till when they reached the other side, a dominie in grey put gently up the evening bars and let the flock away. Cancel the rule for me? Thank you, Father. You see, sometimes he yielded when I least expected it. Oh, I'm sure he didn't know how obsessed I was with the desire for publication. In fact, I don't remember Father ever reading my poetry. He didn't seem to have an aesthetic sense. By that I mean he showed so little interest in anything but his law practice and the duties of college treasurer. Like the night of Jenny Lind, the Swedish nightingale. Father took us to the concert, and the bouquets fell in showers, and she sang, and she sang, and she sang, and she bowed, and sang, and bowed, and sang. Well, we didn't get home until after midnight. And Father sat there all night like old Abraham, looking mad. Well, her trills were a bit curious. We didn't care a fig for that Swedish nightingale. We'd have rather heard a Yankee whippoorwill. But what I suspect what was on Father's mind was the $4,000 she was taking out of town. Then, one autumn evening, We were all startled by a violent church bell ringing, and thinking of nothing but fire, we rushed out into the street to see. Vinny! Mother! Quick! The sky was a beautiful red, bordering on a crimson, with rays of a gold pink color shooting off constantly from a kind of sun in the center. Oh, people were alarmed by the phenomenon, supposing that fires somewhere were coloring the skies. But it was the northern lights. The aurora borealis. The exhibition lasted for nearly 15 minutes, and the streets of Amherst were filled with people wondering and admiring. And who do you think first noticed that remarkable sky? Who do you imagine ran over to the church to ring the bell and call everybody's attention to such beauty? My father. The first time we parted in 1847, I was 16. I had graduated Amherst Academy and entered Mount Holyoke Female Seminary, which was run by a dragon. Oh, I wanted to tell you about her. Mary Lyon ran the school, a noble lady, sometimes known as the Dragon. Oh, I liked Miss Lyon, even though she laid down strict rules for her girls. Unfortunately, her primary concern was for our spiritual health. We were classified into 3 categories. We were either professed Christians, that was Jane Gridley's group. We had hope, that was Olivia Colman's group. Or we were without hope. Naturally, I was in charge of that group. After Miss Lyon made a vigorous appeal for converts, the without hopes were reduced considerably. I'll never forget it. One night, we impenitent girls were invited by the dragon to a meeting in room D, the dungeon, and we were told, bring your Bibles. Oh, I told Olivia this would happen, that Miss Lyon would ask everyone who desired to be employed in the service of Christ to rise at the meeting and declare herself. Courage, Emily. Good evening, Miss Lyon. I'm sorry, Miss Lyon, but I can't rise. I know I'm the only left without hope, but the Spirit hasn't moved me yet. Yes, ma'am. I desire to be good. Yes, I want to please my parents, but I'm not yet persuaded to be a Christian. I appreciate your offer of mercy, ma'am, and I know the world is sinful and wicked, but the path of duty doesn't look very attractive to me. But I have read the Bible, Miss Lyon, Old and New Testaments. Well, at first I thought it was an arid book, but then I found it to be wise and a bit merry. Yes, ma'am. Merry. She did look like a dragon. I think it was the nose. But I mustn't laugh at Miss Lyon, for I believe she had a pure heart, and that is the principal thing nowadays, isn't it? I wonder if I'll ever become a Christian, for I feel it is impossible for anyone to be happy without a treasure in heaven. I feel I can never be happy without I love Christ. Perhaps the kingdom of heaven's changed. I hope the children there won't be new-fashioned when I come and laugh at me and stare. I hope the Father of the skies will lift his little girl, old-fashioned, naughty, everything, over the stile of Pearl. I didn't return to Holyoke the following year. You might say I wore out my welcome with Miss Lyon. And Father wanted me home besides. He said it was for my health, but I think Father was lonely. Austin was soon to leave for Harvard, and Father couldn't bear to have the family separated. More than one away at a time was too much for him. All the while Austin was at home, they'd do nothing but fight. But once they were separated, they became devoted friends. This is Austin. Isn't he handsome? There was no one living for whom my father had such respect as for my brother Austin. But no one missed him more than I did. Austin! The coach is here! Every time he left, I stood out there on the road and I watched the stagecoach disappear. I'd wait for Austin to turn around. I had to be sure he saw me. It was almost a superstition with me. I thought that if he didn't see me as the coach went over the hill, we'd never meet again. So it could be raining or snowing, but there I stood out on the road waiting for his last little look through that window in the coach. Those times seem far off now, a great ways. Those things we did when children. Oh, I wish we were children now. And the nails hung full of coats again, and the chairs hung full of hats, and the umbrellas all in a row, and I could count the slippers under the kitchen chair. I wish we were always children. How to grow up, I don't know. Just before my 25th birthday, Austin returned from law school, and he never left Amherst again, though I think he wanted to. Austin, when he graduated, he had an offer with a law firm in Chicago. He was just about ready to leave when Father offered to build him a home right next door if he'd stay. It was the easy answer in some ways, not so easy in others. But Father always got his way, and Austin stayed. Probably Sue influenced him too. Susan Gilbert was engaged to marry Austin at the same time Father made his generous and unselfish offer. From this room, we can look over to Sue's house. We call it the Evergreens. This, of course, is the homestead. There's a path between, just wide enough for two who love. But no one uses it much anymore. Sue and I used it more than anyone. Sue is the only one who understands my need to write. I love her dearly. But she doesn't understand my love. Perhaps I don't understand it myself. I've always been intense about relationships. At times, my love overwhelms people, and it puzzles me. My business is to love. It's dangerous to love as I do. Bliss is so unnatural, don't you think? The path is overgrown with weeds now. I guess it's best to abandon paths when you find they lead nowhere. Today is far from childhood, yet up and down the hills, I held her hand the tighter, which shortened all the miles. There, all the prim, starched ladies of Amherst are right now toiling with needle and thread over their communion bonnets. Henny will outdo them all. So incongruous, don't you think, putting coronets on crows? In this parlor, we always met for morning prayers as far back as childhood. Everyone in the family was religious, except for me. And each morning they addressed in eclipse who they called Our Father which art in heaven. I can still hear Father say in a most militant way, I say unto you. It always gave me a chill. Why is religion made so grim, so dull? Why should we be made to feel guilty? Sermons, sermons, sermons. I only heard one sermon I really liked, and that was when Reverend Dwight preached on unbelief. Sermons on unbelief always did attract me. It was a sweltering July Sabbath when I decided to stop attending church altogether. Well, I was old enough to make that decision. I was almost 30. I came home very hot and faded, having witnessed a couple of baptisms, 3 admissions to church, a supper of the Lord, and some other minor transactions, including a sermon wheezed by Reverend Leland. Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all ye lands, and come before his presence with singing. Singing indeed. Oh, Reverend Leland. Some keep the Sabbath going to church. I keep it staying at home, with a bobolink for a chorister and an orchard for a dome. Some keep the Sabbath in surplice. I just wear my wings, and instead of tolling the bell for church, our little sexton sings. God preaches, a noted clergyman, and his sermon is never long. So instead of getting to heaven at last, I'm going all along in the name of the bee and of the butterfly and of the breeze. Amen. Ah, you agree? When the family went to church, I was never alone. God was sitting right there looking into my very soul. How do you spend your evening? Vinny and I read the Springfield Republican every night. Our dear friend Samuel Bowles is the editor. I read the news aloud while Vinny sews. Vinny has an odd liking for those stories about accidents where trains meet each other unexpectedly, or gentlemen in factories get their heads cut off quite informally. The author relates them in such a sprightly way. Vinny finds the story very attractive. She was disappointed last night that there weren't more accidents. Oh, here's one you'll love, Vinny. Train hits woman on Mill River trestle. Cornelia Snell, 54, Snell, was killed last Wednesday by the Belchertown Express as she struggled vainly to free her foot from the railroad switch. Her foot, Vinny. Engineer Grover W. Putnam declared, by the time I saw the poor lady and her dog, it was too late. Yes, Vinny. She leaves her husband, Noah L. Snell, and 8 children. 8 little Snells! Oh, the dog survived. It jumped clear. No, Vinny, the casket was closed. She was hit by a train. Services happened already, it says, last Friday. Handley and Son in Springfield. Some 60 attended. Aw, her children are planting an evergreen near the spot in her memory. Isn't that sweet, Vinny? I wonder why she didn't take off her shoe. Vinny? Vinny? Oh, she's asleep. Speaking of trains, there wasn't a more exciting day in Amherst than the day of the railroad decision in 1852. It made all the headlines. Father was really satisfied with himself. He fought hard for the railroad to come into Amherst. Seemed like a fairy tale, a most miraculous event in our lives. The day the train finally arrived was called New London Day. It was hot and dusty, but no one cared for that. Father was, as usual, chief marshal of the day, and he went marching through the town like Mr. Amherst himself, with New London at his heels, like some old Roman general on a triumph day. I sat out there in Professor Tyler's woods and watched the train move off. I liked to watch it lick the mile and lap the valleys up, then stop to feed itself at tanks, and then prodigious step around a pile of mountains and supercilious pier in shanties by the side of roads, and then a quarry pair to fit its sides and crawl between, complaining all the while in horrid hooting stanza, then chase itself downhill and neigh like Boanerges, then punctual as a star, stop, docile and omnipotent at its own slum door. It's fall, and you know what New England autumns are like. Amherst has gone to Eden, and the moon rides like a girl through a topaz town. Vinny says that autumn is one long chore. Can you imagine? She's out there now, picking apples for cider. Oh, the ladder. Buffy! Oh, Buffy, you one-eyed monster! Leave my yarn alone! Oh. Vinny's one big passion is cats. Unfortunately, mine is birds. And now she has a new bird, Drummy Doodles. It catches a mouse an hour. We call it the Minute Hand. Oh, look at that! Feathers all over the orchard. They're floating everywhere. Vinny! Vinny, your cats are killing my birds! Blame the creator! Blame your cats! Oh, I warn you, I'm going to find assassins for them. Vinny thinks her cats are just a little lower than angels. A china saucer for each one. Indeed, if she had her way, they'd dine on sherry and hummingbird cutlets every night. It's so weird and so vastly mysterious. Vinny sleeps by my side. Her care is in some way motherly. But if we had been brought up for the first time from two wells from which we had been bred, her astonishment couldn't be greater at some things I say. Like Father was. Mother was different. Mother didn't care much for thought. Consequently, she never listened to what I said. And we all lived together like friendly and absolute monarchs here at Homestead, each in his own domain. And yet, I was the slightest in the house. I took the smallest room. At night, my little lamp and book and one geranium, so stationed I could catch the mint that never ceased to fall. And just my basket. Let me think. I'm sure that this was all. I never spoke unless addressed, and then 'twas brief and low. I could not bear to live aloud. The racket shamed me so. And if it had not been so far, and anyone I knew were going, I had often thought how noteless I could die. One thing I forgot to tell you about the black cake. Be sure to place a shallow pan of water in the bottom of the oven and then remove it during the last hour of baking. I knew I'd left something out. Do you read the Atlantic Monthly? In the April issue, 1862, an article appeared inviting young writers to submit their work. Charge your style with life, said its author, Thomas Wentworth Higginson. Oh, this was what I'd been waiting for. Sue agreed. We spent days looking for just the right poems to send. But Sue thought Father would disapprove. No, Sue, he'll approve soon enough when my poems bring honor to his name. Now, look for one that's a good contrast to the other three while I finish writing this letter. It has to capture his attention. I want him to see that I'm different, not just some country poetess sending little verses to the city editor, but really inspired. It says right here, every editor is always hungering and thirsting after a genius. Sue, tell me how you like this. Mr. Higginson, are you too deeply occupied to say if my verse is alive? The mind is so near itself, it cannot see distinctly, and I have none to ask, would give me sincere honor toward you. I enclose my name, asking you, if you please, sir, to tell me what is true, that you will not betray me. It is needless to ask, since honor is its own pawn. Well, I'm not going to sign it. Maybe on a little card, slipped into the poems. He'll find it. He'll look for it. Emily Dickinson. No. E. Dickinson. Mysterious. It is provocative, isn't it? To whet his curiosity, don't you think? Mr. Thomas Wentworth Higginson. Atlantic Monthly. Now, it's on Washington and it's School Streets, right? Yes, Washington and School Streets, Boston, Massachusetts. Now, we must clean up these scraps of paper. No one must know that the mysterious E. Dickinson writes second and third drafts of her drafts of her letters. Mr. Higginson answered my letter, but not in the way I had hoped. I thanked him for the surgery. It wasn't as painful as I supposed. He did ask to see more letters and more poems, and I sent them. I wrote him often, even began calling him my preceptor, and myself his scholar. 8 years of correspondence. 8 years of putting my hopes on the shelf. Then, one day, when I was 40, the incredible happened. Thomas Wentworth Higginson was coming to Amherst. Face to face at last. Now we can accomplish something. I look forward to meeting with you and will come directly from my visit with President Stearns at the college, he says, the 15th. Oh, my dear friend, you were not aware that you saved my life. I will be at home and glad. I have been so afraid. It's like being terrified of midnight as a child. But now, it's time to smooth the hair and get the dimples ready and wonder we could care for that old faded midnight that frightened but an hour. He's coming to Amherst at last. It seems I'm going to be famous. Sue! Oh, Sue, wait till you hear. I have the most glorious news. He's coming. He's coming.
Ladies and gentlemen, join us next Sunday at 5 for the conclusion of the Belle of Amherst and the conclusion of SCCT Radio Hour Season 1, right here on Gila Members Community Radio, KURU 89.1 FM, Silver City, New Mexico, and streaming online at gmcr.org. Blessings all.